Hey guys, welcome back. I have a new snowblower here to play with. It is a Yard King 9 horsepower 27-inch snowblower. It is old, 1996 or 1997, so what is that, 22, 23 years, something like that. Has a 9 horsepower Tecumseh, and the previous owner said that he had carb problems with it. He got it to run, but it ran rough, and he was never able to fix it. And this season, it just didn't run at all. So I figure let's go take a look at it. Why don't we have a look at the spark plug to see if that will give us any clues as to how this thing's been running. It looks really new. Looks like somebody replaced it or cleaned it up recently. That's looking quite nice. What do you say? Why don't we test the electric start and do a compression test at the same time? I've already checked the oil. It does have oil in it. It's pretty dirty, you know, the usual. But before we attach the gauge, why don't we just test the electric start? Say that works pretty good. All right, why don't we attach the gauge and see what we get? All right, can you guys see that? And note that this is with the throttle closed. The choke actually doesn't work. The choke is like half closed, so this number is going to be a low representation of what the compression actually is, because we're restricting the intake here. And the compression is a hair over 120. I want to call it like, let's call it 120. So that's pretty good compression. And so if I held the throttle open and got the choke unstuck, this number would probably be 5 to 10 psi higher. Let's see if we have spark. I'd say that's a positive. Alright, so we have compression, we have spark, we have air. The one thing we probably do not have is fuel. And this carburetor, I'm sure, is a piece of work. This choke knob doesn't even turn, and I can kind of see in there the carburetor looks pretty bad. So I am going to start disassembling this, and we'll see what we have. This snowblower is definitely showing its age. It's pretty dirty all around. It's got some rust, nothing too terrible, I don't think. Most of the rust is inside the auger housing up there. I haven't showed that yet, but if we can get this engine to run and run well, then I think we will get into that and see if we need to address anything, and if we do, how we're going to address it. Also, if this thing ends up running, I'm going to wash it off when the weather allows, and I don't know, maybe I'll try and, I don't know whether I want to clean up some of this stuff or not. We'll see. First things first, let's see if we can get it running. Can get that choke lever off. Can I get it to clear? Oh. I'm gonna have to take this kill wire off. The kill wire is held on by a screw down here. So I'm gonna have to take that off, and then I should be able to get this cover out of the way. I got that kill wire off. Let's see if this thing will come out now. Yes, it does. It's got some rust. It's not terrible, but it's not the prettiest of things. Might wipe it down, might sand it a little bit, I don't know, we'll see. There we go, here's the carburetor, here's the gem. Let me lower you down a little bit. Now, the easiest way to remove these carburetors on these 8 and 9 horsepower and 10 horsepower Tecumseh engines is to just take the entire intake pipe off. So the guy I got this from said that he has already rebuilt this carburetor one time, and he said it ran, but not well. It ran rough, whatever that means. He said that the guy he got it from before him also had problems, couldn't get it to run. So I don't know where it was before that, but get the feeling that this thing has been around the block a few times, if you know what I mean. And I do not know what to expect out of this. Usually when lots of people have been in it before, you'll find all sorts of things. Disconnect this fuel line. This fuel line is split. I think we're going to have to replace that. I'm going to get my fuel line pliers and see if I can get that off. All right, here we go. These things are great for this. I sent a pair to Bruce Pender. Whoa. Is this fuel shut off? Let me go check and see if this fuel is shut off. No, the fuel was not shut off. It was on, so that would explain why gas came pouring out. It is off now. There we go. That's a little better. And remember which hole that is that this thing goes into. I don't know if this is the right hole or not, because so many people have been in this carburetor before, but it goes in, this kind of middle outside one. Remember that, guys. Let's get this primer line off. There we go. There we go. One carburetorectomy. It looks like, I don't know what this is. Like sand or maybe cement or something like that. I think I'm gonna get some mineral spirits and wipe down some of this stuff. I don't know what it is, but I don't want it to corrode the engine block. That cleaned up pretty well, I'd say. Not sure what that stuff was. It did kind of stain the block a little bit, but there's no corrosion or anything, so probably good that I got it off of there. So here's the carburetor, and as you can see, some of it is kind of rusted. I'm going to have to take a wire brush to that to clean it up. This is an older style carb, non-EPA, with an adjustable jet and an idle jet here, adjustable idle jet. So I see this thing as being easier to deal with than the newer EPA carbs with a fixed jet, because we can tune the performance with this. So I'm curious as to why it has consistently not been running well for the past few owners, because this should in theory be easier to get running. So I don't know, maybe we'll find some secrets inside this carb. So I am going to make another how-to video on repairing this carburetor, rebuilding it, and I will link that video when it becomes available in the upper right hand corner. You should see a link there, and if you want to see a detailed how-to of how I'm cleaning this carburetor, then check that out. Look at that, isn't that pretty? She cleaned up pretty well, wouldn't you say? Again, be sure to check out the link on the how I cleaned this carburetor up and rebuilt it. It's a pretty interesting video. I think it's kind of long, but it should be very informative. I am not liking this fuel line in there. It is cracked and split. The gas in the tank is old, so I have to drain that regardless. I actually want to clean this cover up and paint it, and I want to run a new fuel line through there, which would be very easy if this cover was off. So just for fun, now that the carburetor is off and the intake is completely exposed and there's no resistance to the airflow at all, I'm just curious what the compression will be, what difference it makes. Any bets? My bet is that probably not much. Let's find out. 125, maybe a hair over. So, 5 psi. I have decided that I am going to take these engine covers off and paint them. So, let's start by removing this recoil. Next, I am going to remove this throttle lever. I think we can probably let this hang. Alright, time for these two bolts. What do you think? Do you think I'm going to get these off without breaking them? I'm going to use a 6-point socket and a 1/2 inch ratchet. Oh, that's crunchy. Oh, good. Good. Very good. Let's try this one. This starter is kind of in the way. There we go. Good. Actually, let me see if we can get the starter off. Let's finish taking these the rest of the way out. I will clean these up on the wire wheel. Got some extra bolts down here below. We have 2 bolts down here. This one and one just like it on the other side. This one is pretty wretched looking. Really rusty. Hopefully it will not give us trouble. Looks like this one is holding the bracket for the ground wiring. So I will clean all of this stuff up with a wire wheel. I'd say that's seen better days, wouldn't you? Alright, I'm gonna get the other one on the other side, and I will bring you back when I'm ready to take the cover off. What do you think? Maybe a little tappy tap tap? I think I'm gonna need to take this rod out. Turns out I didn't have to remove that. I just put it in 6th gear, and it gave me enough room to wiggle this thing out. And as you can see, it's pretty rusted. So I think I'm gonna clean this up. Probably gonna go outside with the wire wheel. This is gonna make a lot of rust dust, and yeah, and then I'm gonna spray it down. And if I'm doing that, I probably might as well take some of these other brackets and stuff off and shoot them too. I have all the tins off, and I hit them initially with the wire wheel to get the heavy stuff off. You can see that the metal is kind of pitted, and you know, I'm not really gonna sand it down so it's you know, smooth. or anything like that. I'm just trying to get the rust off and get some paint on it. I'm not trying to win any contests here or anything like this. This is not a restoration. This is just a refresh. I went ahead and cleaned up the all the metal tins and everything and shot them with a coat of paint. So as you can see, they turned out not bad. They're nothing to write home about. You can still see where the rust was on them. It's, you know, I sanded it a little bit, but you know, in the light you can still see it. It's all right. I covered up all of the decals with painter's tape, and so now I am going to go through and try and peel these off. There, that's pretty good. So I am going to go through and do that on all of these tins. You know, since the fuel tank is off, it's a good time to replace this cracked fuel line. So I have this new piece of ethanol resistant J30R9 right about there. These clamps are a little crunchy. I might change those. These are the original fuel clamps. They're a little bit crunchy, on the crunchy side. So I found 4 slightly less crunchy fuel clamps. So I think we're going to use these. Okay, there we go. The other day it was 70 degrees out, and I took the opportunity to kind of wash off the snowblower, get some of the dirt and grime off of it. It cleaned up pretty nicely, so I say that we get some of these tins back on and start reassembling it. I figure now is a good time to install the fuel line. And the fuel line basically routes through here, and then there is a tab here that the fuel line goes between, so it goes between the engine block and this tab, and then through, and I think there's one more tab or piece of sheet metal on the other side that it routes around as well. I'll let you guys watch me struggle. Alright, I got it. Finally. Alright, let's see if we can get this recoil tin back on. Alright, I have the bracket for the wiring back on and the kill wire connected there. Alright, we are back together. I am not going to install the cover because I'm going to need to get in here to the idle mixture screw and the jet underneath of here to tune it once I get it started. So why don't we do that? Why don't we see if we can give this thing its first start. I put the primer line and the choke lever back on. I put gas in the tank and we're ready to go. It's outside. Sorry about the wind. It's starting to get windier. But let's see. Seems to run, but it doesn't idle. I gotta figure out why that is. I'd say it runs okay. I mean, I can fiddle with the jets for forever, but it ran well enough for me to continue on with it. I think the next thing I'm going to do now that the engine is warm is I'm going to try and change this oil. How am I going to do this? I guess I'm going to put it under here. 20 bucks says I make a mess. Oh yeah, that's a mess. That's a mess on the floor. The problem is that the oil shoots out and it goes into the tire or into the wheel. Let me dump this container out and clean up my massive oil spill. You want to see my mess? I know you want to see it. Everyone loves a train wreck. Yeah, that's a mess. It's like it never happened. Almost. I think I'm going to call it here. This video is getting pretty long at this point. Thanks for joining me on part 1 of this snowblower video, this Yard King Performance 9 horsepower video. If you like these videos, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you on part 2.